I had been married to Eliza for 12 years, and for most of that time, our life together felt like a dream. We had built a home filled with warmth, laughter, and love. Our two children were the center of our world, and I truly believed we were a team, partners in every sense of the word. But life is a way of unraveling even the most tightly woven threads, and ours began to fray when Eliza took a new job. At first, it seemed like a positive change, a step forward in her career. But as the weeks passed, I noticed a shift in her. She became distant, preoccupied, and less present in our family life. The woman I had known, who once shared every detail of her day with me, now seemed like a stranger. It started with small things. She would come home late, citing work deadlines, and her phone, which had always been left casually on the kitchen counter, was now always in her hand or tucked away in her bag. Her smiles, once so easy and frequent, became rare, and our conversations dwindled to practical matters about the kids or household chores. I tried to convince myself that it was just the stress of her new role, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. The gnawing feeling in my gut grew stronger with each passing day. One evening, after she left the house unusually late, I couldn't shake the suspicion that had been building inside me. My heart raced as I made the decision to follow her. I told myself it was out of concern, but the truth was, I was driven by a mix of jealousy and fear. I trailed her car through the quiet streets, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, my mind racing with possibilities. When she pulled into a parking lot near a local cafe, I parked a distance away and watched as she walked inside. My stomach churned as I saw her meet a man I didn't recognize. They sat together, laughing, talking, and at one point, she reached out to touch his hand. It was a small gesture, but it felt like a knife to my heart. I stood there, hidden in the shadows, my phone trembling in my hand as I took photos, evidence of what I already knew in my heart. My world crumbled in that moment. When I confronted Eliza the next day, I was desperate for an explanation, something that would make sense of what I had seen. But instead of honesty, she deflected. She accused me of being paranoid, of invading her privacy, and of not trusting her. Her words were sharp, and they cut deep. She twisted the narrative, making me feel like the one in the wrong, as if my suspicions were the problem rather than her actions. I felt blindsided, betrayed, and utterly alone. The woman I had loved and trusted for over a decade was now a stranger, and the life we had built together felt like a lie. The days that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and endless conversations with myself. I replayed every moment, every word, trying to make sense of what had happened. I thought about our children, their innocent faces, and the life they had always known. The guilt of breaking up our family weighed heavily on me. But I knew that staying together for their sake would only lead to more pain and resentment. I wanted them to grow up in a loving environment, even if that meant redefining what our family looked like. After much soul-searching, I made the difficult decision to seek a divorce. I was determined to handle the situation with as much care as possible, especially for our children. I reached out to a child counselor, someone who could help us navigate this transition in a way that would minimize the impact on them. Together, Eliza and I sat down with our kids to explain what was happening. We reassured them that they were loved, that this decision had nothing to do with them, and that both of us would always be there for them. It was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had, but I knew it was necessary. I wanted them to feel safe and secure, even as their world was changing. But as the weeks went by, things grew more complicated. Eliza began to manipulate the situation, portray herself as the victim, and subtly turning the children against me. I could see the confusion and pain in their eyes, and it broke my heart. I felt powerless, but I knew I had to protect myself and my relationship with our kids. I began to meticulously document everything: her infidelity, her behavior, and her attempts to manipulate the narrative. I knew that in the legal battle ahead, evidence would be crucial. The divorce proceedings were grueling. Emotions ran high, and every interaction with Eliza felt like walking on eggshells. At one point, I made the difficult decision to share evidence of her infidelity with her employer. It wasn't something I did lightly, but I felt it was necessary to protect myself and our children. She lost her job as a result, and while I knew it was a consequence of her actions, I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. I never wanted to hurt her financially, but I felt I had no other choice. Co-parenting became an ongoing challenge. Every interaction with Eliza was fraught with tension, and I had to constantly remind myself to stay calm and focus on what was best for the kids. I was determined to provide them with stability and love, even as their mother and I navigated our new, fractured relationship. Therapy became a lifeline for all of us, a space where we could process our emotions and begin to heal. Through it all, I held on to the hope that we could create a new normal for our family. It wasn't the life I had envisioned, but I knew it was possible to build something meaningful and loving, even in the aftermath of betrayal and heartbreak. Every day was a reminder of the strength I needed to find, for myself and for our children. We were all learning to move forward in our own ways, one step at a time. And while the road ahead was uncertain, I was committed to walking it with as much grace and resilience as I could muster. For the sake of our children, and for the sake of the future we were trying to build, I knew I had to keep going.